Hey guys, Shane here, Fugatech 3D Printing, and today we're going to do part 2 of the Trianglelab D-Force Mini Delta 3D Printer Kit. And today we're working on the electronics. So welcome back guys. So like I said, we're going to start the electronics of the D-Force Mini Kit that I got from Trianglelab. So the hardware here is done minus the pulleys, or I should say the chassis is done minus the pulleys. Now we're going to go ahead and start working on getting these stepper motors mounted. That's the next part here. And then we're going to be working on pulleys soon. So we're going to get these mounted and dig right in. Okay, now that I have these stepper motors mounted, it was real nice, meant to say this, but the motors come pre-mounted onto their mounts, and then those mounts get mounted to the acrylic plate. But I was screwing these down, I noticed something that I didn't really notice before. I kind of thought about it. So they're using, I think this is like what you would call the V groove of aluminum extrusion. So it's not as deep, in my opinion, as some other 2020. But the problem is that they're using the M5s are 12 millimeter, and they are a good, I'd say 3 millimeter too long, because they're all sticking out even though they're all the way tight. That's because it's already gone through the T-nut, and the T-nut has turned, but the screw is bottoming out against the aluminum extrusion. So these are all too long, and I'm actually going to write to the company because they wanted my opinion on all the different parts and everything, and I would tell them, hey, you need to downsize these to probably 6 millimeter. Like I said, the FT5 uses its 1/4 inch melamine they're using 5 millimeters. I think those are a little bit too short, simply because you don't really have a lot of wiggle room. Like it's like not even a turn on, maybe a half turn on, and then put it in and then tighten it down because it has to have so much clearance. But with these, a 6 millimeter would be more than enough, and we could eliminate this. So I'll zoom in so you guys can see this. So I hope you guys can see this. It's a little hard, but you can see the top of the T-nuts there, or the top of the screws. There is clearance here from where the acrylic ends and where the screw actually ends. And even in some of these parts, I don't know why I didn't notice this before, there actually are gaps. Sorry, this is a little hard to hang on this angle here. There's actually gaps here between the acrylic and the aluminum extrusion. So I'm going to talk about that, and hopefully they can send me out some new screws and include it in their kits. But that is just one, just a real small issue. It holds the bottom on, but definitely is not great, especially when using aluminum. So hopefully they can get that fixed. Alright, so next part we're going to do here is the belts and the outer pulleys. So since I don't have the pulleys put together yet, I'm just going to go ahead and tape them on here because I need them on in order to attach this. Adding the wheels to these while they're already on won't be a problem at all. I just want to be sure that I add these belts in now. Otherwise, I'm not sure I'll be able to get to them very easily in the future once I get all the wires and everything going down underneath. So for now, a little bit of crap-on tape. Tape it right on there. We'll be able to tighten them down, no problem. So all these are is they go on and then they loop around. You can see here, they will end up looping around each one of these sides, like so. And then they will be zip tied together here, and then just trim off the access. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to the 3 axes, or the 3 vertical rails, and we'll come back. Alright, so I've got 2 of the 3 pulleys done, but I've run into a snafu where I've got all the parts here for the pulleys, but this, I'm going to call this a bushing that goes onto these bolts, okay, and then these attach to the pulley like so. This is where the belt gets clamped onto on this, this pulley. Well, I'm missing one, and I've looked everywhere, and I've opened all the bags up again and checked everywhere, and I've checked my workspace again and checked the floor. I mean, I haven't pulled them out except to dump them straight into this plastic container. So this is going to be a not missing piece, but this is actually a little more critical, because if it's a bolt, got lots of screws and bolts hanging around here. I can always put another one on or figure something out. But you can't MacGyver your way out of this one, because you really need to have the part that's specified for this. But we can just tighten it down. So it just tightens down like so. And I'll just leave the one side loose so I don't break this acrylic piece. And we'll go from there. I'll attach it, but then I'll be able to pull this out, put in that bushing, reattach it, and then I'll be able to really tighten down that one pulley. But either way, I'm not going to get this done, you know, before I get those parts anyways, but at least I can tell the manufacturer, hey, I need these new parts as well. So I'm going to finish this up real quick. Alright, so the pulleys are installed, you know, the way they should be. I said minus this one, the bushing on this one, which again, I'll write to them and have them send that over to me. So the next part is going to be to take care of these end stops. So I found it interesting that they didn't send crimps. Instead, they sent crimped ends that are already cut. So they're already cut and they are already stripped. So that's, you know, nice. Yellow is longer than black, which I don't like, so I'm going to redo that. But anyways, so all we're going to do is we're going to take these, we're going to solder them to the end of these. With end stops, it doesn't matter, positive, negative, same thing with thermistors, doesn't matter. And they give you the heat shrink tubing as well. They say to use the yellow. So I have the heat shrink tubing, so I have my soldering iron heating up right now. We'll go ahead, we're going to solder these on, put the shrink tubing on it, and then these will all be ready to connect to the board once we get that installed. Okay, so we've got the end stops all wired up now, they're good to go. Next part it's saying going through instructions is going to be to add the levers, which are these bars, onto the extruder head using M3x16. So these just thread through and then they screw in, and there's 3, 4, 6 of them, so shouldn't take just any more than a minute. I'll get these installed and we'll go on to the next part. So I was screwing these lever arms onto this extruder head, and I was like, wow, that screwed in really easily. I thought they were supposed to bite into this. I looked around the back and it's actually a hexagon shape for a nut. I was like, alright, let me look around. So I looked through every one of these bags. I mean, there's not that many that come with it. None of them have the M3 nuts for it. So I was like, alright, let me dig into my stocks here. So I went looking through things. I found 5. But there's this one I'm putting up here to the side like this that didn't have it, so I'm missing the 6th one. So 5 out of the 6 are done. I'm going to dig up here through my organizers on my drawers and see if I can find one. But it's interesting that it doesn't say that in the instructions and doesn't even give any close-ups. But I mean, that's the only way to keep these actually locked in, because once I got it on, I was like, oh, this thing just won't tighten. I was like, oh shoot. So it's another thing we'll be writing back to them. So this is the 3rd issue right now. This is a stopping issue for the extruder. I mean, I can mount it up now at least, but I'm not going to, simply because these arms are not complete, the pulleys are not complete, but at least this part will be done. So I'll write to them and get this sent in, and wait for that part to come in before I can finish this up. So since we're going to put the extruder side for now, we're going to go ahead and mount the board onto the bottom. So here's the board here. Okay. Alright, so this is a MKS base version 1.5 board, and this mounts on standoffs, which are in here somewhere. The standoffs go right in the bottom, and then I will go ahead and place this on there. There really is no need for isolation, simply because it's mounting on acrylic, so the standoffs alone are enough to isolate the board from anything else. I'll get that mounted in, and then we'll see where we're going to start connecting up the motors and the end stops, and we'll get the build plate on there soon. So we'll mount this in and just go from there. Alright, so the next issue is there are no standoffs that I can see. There are, where'd they go? There's these, I mean, these look like these are isolated standoffs, but they have washers and T-nuts, and I don't need T-nuts for this, so I don't know what these are for. Okay, so I lied. I can't find the standoffs anywhere in any of the things. There's these ones here, which they look like they're isolated type of standoffs, but I don't know what they're used for, and I can't find them anywhere. So I don't think those are it. So again, I'm at another kind of stopping point here. I'm gonna have to take a break and email the company and say, hey, you know, what's going on? Where are these parts? So this is issue number 4 for those of you who are keeping track. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to pause here and see what they say, or if there's something in here that I'm supposed to use that I'm just not seeing. So we'll be back. Alright, so I sent off my email to the company about all the missing parts currently. Wait for them to get back to me. I actually don't know if they're going to get back to me because it's Friday night, and since it's going to be the weekend, they're in China, they're already gone for the day. Obviously it's late here, so we might not be till next week. So we're going to go ahead and finish putting together what I can, and then whatever I can finish we'll put into this video, and the last video I'll do for this is going to be the final assembly and the first prints, probably like a calibration type deal. So right now I'm going to work on the extruder. So I can definitely tell that this was a special run kit because there are several differences with how things are done versus the manual versus what I have. So I mean, I also have, you know, 3 lengths, 3 bags of the pulley chain, and they're all exactly the same. There's 3 inside of here, which makes it up. So I'm not sure why I had so many extras of that. This one also comes with a Titan knockoff. The one in the manual does not come with this, so I'm going to have to pull up my documentation that I have from my actual E3D Titan and kind of check them out and make sure that they mount properly. So we have this metal bracket here which mounts to the side, mounts right here to the side of the printer, okay, and then the extruder motor goes right on there, and the Titan goes on top of that. And again, I need to figure out how in the world to mount this all properly. I'm sorry, it actually goes upright like this so that it pulls the filament through. And yeah, so I'm gonna have to kind of experiment with this a little bit and see how it goes, because there is no instructions. There are several different parts here for this extruder. I'm assuming this is because it is the Bowden style. So I need to use, this is probably 3mm, this is probably for 1.5, depending on the Bowden tube size. Again, this is all different, so I'm have to figure it out. So I'm going to put this together now, and then I'll show you what it looks like right after I mount it on there, see if we can get this done. Okay, so got the extruder on here with the Titan on it as well. So I actually, the front is where the USB connection comes out the front here, and that's also where the cables are going to route through. I decided to put it on the other side, but that's only because I don't want the filament spool to be in front of my printer. I'd rather it be in the back. So I'm also not too keen on having the extruder on the bottom. I'd kind of rather have it up here on the top, simply because I would rather mount a some type of spool holder on the top, or you know, up here. I should bring this down. So I'd rather mount a spool holder here and have it go, you know, pull it in and go down into it. But that would be a change, because the extruder has this webbing on it, which is super simple. I can take the webbing off and put new webbing on, or just pull out the Bowden tube and run that a different route. Not a big deal, but for now we're going to build it stock the way they intended it for as much as I can. I have to make some modifications simply because I have to get it to work. And we're going to kind of go from there. So like I said, so this is mounted on right now on the side, but if you look down here on the bottom where it's supposed to go through, there's a hole right there. So since I have this up here, again, kind of hard to see here, but if I put my hand here, you can see there's a hole right here. This is for the USB cable. Well, it's rectangle, but it didn't fit, so I actually had to go ahead and get my file set out and file it to get this through, because again, it's a little different than what they have in their instructions. Their version has a much smaller USB connection on the end of it, but this one is much larger. So I have to do that in order to even get this to fit through, which now it's stuck. Okay. And once this is on, once you feed that through, this just mounts in like so. So I'm going to mount that, and then I'm going to get out the LCD. We're going to put the LCD on, get all the cables inside here. So all we're really going to have to do is drop in the board, and we should be able to power it up. Obviously you have to wait for a couple of things, but all we have to do is connect everything to the board once it's in there. So we're going to get all that done now. Okay, so over here we've got the USB now connected. So it's right there on the side. Again, they don't give you any, it just says attach it. They don't give you any specifications. So I used actually the M3x16 and some extra T-nuts they have in the kit for that. And now I'm looking to do the LCD. So this one comes, which doesn't come in the manual, but this one comes with this nice little acrylic cover, which is really nice. You know, it says D-Force on it, and it covers up, you know, the ugly PCB of the LCD screen. Well, there's a lot of things wrong with it. Mainly, number one, is inside here. It's the exact same issue the Fugatech has. The speaker on this newer, what's this, the 2004 LCD, I forget the exact name of it, but the speaker is mounted on the front, which means it gets in the way of anything to cover it. Now you can combat that from what I was told, I haven't done it myself though, is that right back here are the two solder points for the speaker. All you do is you unsolder it, flip it to the back, solder it back in the same orientation, done. Again, I haven't tried that, but this might be a good try for it. So that's one issue with it. Second issue with it is right down here is the emergency stop, the e-stop button. It has arrows going around like you're supposed to turn it. No, you're supposed to be able to push it. Well, unless you have a screw in order to fit down in there and push that e-stop button, you're not going to reach it. So that's poor design there. And these arrows to turn are nice, but they should be around the knob that you actually turn and press. That would make a lot more sense. So this design needs to be fixed. And lastly, I can't use it at all because the actual screw mounting holes are not even. They are off by about 1.5 millimeters on the right side. The left when you're looking at it, the left side, the right side went in okay. No real issues on binding there at all. Left side, they're off, and because they're off so much, this little 3D printed bracket, again, they're good quality. They are not great quality though. The screw holes, you know, where the actual bolts go into, don't line up at all with it. They line up when it's by itself, barely. I mean, they're probably off by 1.5 millimeters, but I can fudge that a little bit to make them work, but not with using this this extra bracket that they sent, not bracket I should say, the faceplate. Again, it's a really nice try. I applaud them for that because seeing PCBs is not sexy, so to say, especially for something that's supposed to be as awesome as 3D printing. We 3D print things to look, you know, to look cool and to be functional, and it just, no, doesn't work. And in order to make this happen, they did send spacers, so they did have in mind that they were going to be hitting the speaker. They knew that, and they sent the spacers in order to not bend the acrylic. But I mean, everything else is it's just not on. So I might use it, or I mean, I'll probably use it for now. But what I'm gonna actually do is we're gonna have to take a break here from this, and I'm gonna have to get my Dremel out, and I'm gonna Dremel these into more ovals instead of being circles. That way I can move the screw a little bit to line up with the holes and let it get in, just because these are not, they don't have great tolerances. What else? So yeah, that's the issues wrong with that plate. So again, that's going to go on my another email back to them saying, hey, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be updated. Other than that, we're still doing okay. I'm actually going to see, I do have some motherboard standoffs that I might be able to use with this in lieu of, you know, waiting for them to send me some. I'll still wait, I mean, I'll still take them when they send them to me, but for the sake of getting this up and running, I'm probably going to do that. I'm trying to kind of work my way around these issues. The pulleys, the wheels, there's nothing I can do about that. But so I'm going to go ahead and take a break for tonight. I'm going to come back tomorrow. I'm going to work on this some more. We'll do some more of the video for that. I apologize, this video is getting a little longer than I intended. I might end up cutting it, but once I splice up everything and get it in, it shouldn't be too terribly long. But we're trying. So again, I'm going to take care of this faceplate here, and we'll get the LCD finally mounted on. I'll see if those other standoffs work with this, and we'll continue on. Well, I decided to look into this a little bit more, so I went ahead and got out my motherboard standoffs, and I actually have a little socket basically that fits on top of that with a Phillips head, so you can kind of get it in there. So I used my electric screwdriver here, and just went real nice and slow, and I was able to get those all in the acrylic without cracking it. They were a little bit larger. I was debating on drilling it, but I was like, you know what, if I just go nice and slow, I won't crack the acrylic. So I was able to do that. Try my best to turn this. So now you can see the board is in there. I have the USB hooked up. I attached the cables for the LCD screen, and I attached all of the extruders and all of the end stops to this. So now this is functional, and when looking at it from the front, it's X on the bottom left, Y on the bottom right, and Z is to the back. And so it's real easy once you remember that. I'm actually going to put little stickies on each of the motors so that I remember in the future. And I'm also going to be tacking down the wiring just so, because a lot of it goes underneath and up through little holes inside, access holes. And I just want the wiring to be safe. The FT5 is up high enough that the wiring isn't really in any danger as long as you tack it up, but you need to tack it up. And this, because it's acrylic, I have the little anchors that the wire can go into. Slipped a couple of those on there. I'll zip tie what's inside just to keep it all nice and balled up, because it's going to get hot down in here. There is no fan. It looks like there are some mounting holes for a fan through their triangle logo on the bottom. So that might be something to look into in the future. Maybe put on some taller feet or print some feet. I could always print feet and then see how it stands and put a little fan on there if the motor starts getting a little too hot or the board gets too hot. Okay, so since I've been kind of jimmy rigging, figuring things out, I was able to figure something out for the extruder. So all I did is, you can't really see it, but I had some leftover square nuts from the FT5 build, and I was like, well, I could get that to work, but it just doesn't fit in there. Well, with this kit comes a few 20mm M3s, and that is just enough for me to get it in there and to get that attached. So now I have that anchored on there. So I mean, we're looking much better now. I wish that I could get these pulleys going, but either way, so I'm able to now, I would be able to attach this. I probably won't yet with the pulleys. I might, I'm not sure yet, but maybe we'll attach it and just see how it looks. Make sure the Bowden tube runs properly and finish getting the wiring going. And if all I have left is to put the pulleys on, so be it. But I might dig through my stuff some more and see if I can find some M3s that would work for that, and we might be able to get this cooking. Okay, so I'm back. It's the next night, and I've done a lot of tinkering here. So I'll show you what happened there. And I talked to the company, to Trianglelab, and they're going to send me out a lot of the new parts. They're sending out new pulleys. They're actually going to send out, instead of these 40mm M4s, they're going to send out 40mm M3s and the appropriate nylocks to go on the end of them in order to hold on the pulleys. But I did find a workaround for now, so I might be able to get it working. We'll see how it looks, but I'll show you how I put one together instead. They're also sending me an assortment of, so this is from my Fugatech FT5, and this is an M5 by 10mm bolt, and then with the M5 T-nuts, this works out perfectly for the 1/4" acrylic, so that there is no, because right now when you screw these through the T-nuts, you actually will make a T with it. It's kind of hard to see here, but when it pushes through, as it's trying to tighten down and the T-nut turns, the screw is continuing to go through. Well, it goes all the way through and it will bottom out against the bottom of the aluminum extrusion and actually will pull away, it will actually pull away whatever you're trying to clamp down, or it just won't clamp down at all, which happens to be my issue with this. So I told them that the 12mm are too long and 10mm is what they need to send. So they're sending me out a bunch of the 10mm, so I'll be able to replace all the 12s with 10 and get everything nice and together, nice and flat. So okay, so let's go on to the pulleys now, and I'll show you what I did with those. Okay, so it's a little hard to see, but it's just because it's all the black here. I actually had some M3 by 50mm screws. So here they are, and they have an Allen head to them. They're pretty small, but as you'll notice here is that the entire thing does not have threads on it. It only has about the last 15 to 20mm, I guess, of that is what has threads. So when I put it through, I was like, crap, there's just a little too much space there for a nut to be able to go on there. As you see, I'm using T-nuts. So I was able to get 3 washers. The kit actually comes with a bunch of M3 washers, which I used up. And then I have just assortment of different washers that I've kept over the years, and thankfully I have. And I'm able to put 3 washers on it and use the T-nuts for now just to get these on. Now I know these will loosen eventually, but these are just to get me through the next 2 weeks until I get the parts from Trianglelab. And actually it goes on there real nice. There's no wobble whatsoever in this, which is pretty amazing. I actually thought there'd be a lot more play. Not saying just because this was like a you know, budget Chinese kit, but just because I'm not familiar with the deltas, you know, they actually goes on there pretty well, and I'm impressed. So the next part we're going to go to on is the LCD. So I'll run through real quick on how to put one of these pulleys together while it's on there. It's not desirable. You should probably do it on, put it together beforehand, but again, in this instant, I didn't think I had any of the parts to be able to make this work, so I didn't. Basically all it is you have the screw here. You're going to put it through first, and then we have these aluminum spacers that go on, and then it's a wheel, another spacer, and then I'm going to find 3 washers here. You know, again, these aren't exactly all M3 size washers, but they do the job. So we're going to put on a couple washers just so I can meet my threads, and then we're going to get an M3 T-nut, which is wherever in the world I put them. There they are. And just spin that on like so. Again, to speed things up, I'm using my little power screwdriver here. Okay, so once you have one on, kind of have to turn here sideways a bit. Once you have one on, you have to actually put the other one together kind of by sliding it through, so you have to line the wheels up first, and then you can push it through. So I have a little bit of soft focus here, let me fix that. Okay, so you kind of have to, like I said, get the wheels lined up, slide the other one through here, put on your spacer, put on your washers. Oops, I need one more. And then you can put on your T-nut, or whatever nut you're going to use. If you have standards, great, but T-nuts is all I have at my disposal right now. Okay, now those are both on there. Again, it's really loose when you only have 2 on, but you know, it fits on there real nice. They are tight on there. There's no wiggle at all, so that's great. So now I just have to add on the last 2, and we'll be good to go. Okay, again, just to show you what it looks like. So I have all of my, you know, my jimmy rigged set on here. And to move it up and down is super duper smooth, 0 wiggle whatsoever. I mean, if I grab that, I mean, the whole thing will move just because I'm on a plastic table. But I mean, other than that, this is actually really solid. So I can't wait to put the extruder on with all those arms and see how they line up. So again, so now let's move on to the LCD and get that settled back on. So I have tried and tried with this LCD cover. I've filed them quite a bit. There's quite a lot of play in the screws now to try and line them up. I don't know if this is that off or if these prints are just that bad. So I looked through the documentation. You can see it on my screen now. I looked through the documentation that they sent me, and the STLs are actually in there. So I'm going to print off a new set of these LCD mounts and see if that helps at all. Also, they sent me 2 of the exact same, and they're supposed to be mirrored of one another. So they're not. So one of these sets of screws are actually underneath the LCD, and the other set is actually outside of it. They both should be outside of it, so you can access it easily, but you can't. But again, that's okay. We'll print those off, and I'll see if that helps at all. Okay, so I'm waiting for those to be printed. I'm going to go ahead and finish wiring up the rest of the board here. So I'll show you what the build plate looks like, and we'll get the extruder mounted on. I have all the pulleys now assembled with my jimmy rig style, and they're all nice and smooth. So I have the LCD, as you can see, put power in it. I have the LCD hooked up now. So hooked up the heated bed. We're going to hook up the motors and everything else to this, and see if we can't get some testing done. So I showed in the unboxing, the extruder is using a ribbon cable for everything, and it's also using a 10-pin connector. So once everything is terminated in this, you just have to terminate the other side, which is a very interesting concept. I like it. It's a little complicated though, because the manual and what they have here does not match. The one that comes in the manual looks like it has a part cooling fan, one of those 50mm turbo style fans, and you can hook up the wires for it, but you don't have one on here. So in the future, if I want to add one, all I have to do is just the cables on the extruder side, just attach the fan to there, and they already have power to them, so they'll be set up. But also it looks like the way they want this to go through is through the same hole where the LCD panel and a lot of other wires are coming, which is all good and fine, except that is at the front of the printer, and the cables have to reach to the back of the printer. And to do that, and to be able to have this to route around the side of the printer so that the extruder can connect to it, those just don't match. So I'm actually just going to run it straight on top, right here on top of this extrusion for now, because there's spacers. I actually found out what some of the spacers are for. There are spacers to keep the aluminum bed off of this, so these will just run underneath of it. It won't be pretty, but it's going to work for now. I might try one other solution here, but for now we're going to do it that way. So now I'm going to go ahead and hook this up. Oh, I did have to solder on a connector onto on the black and white from the ribbon cable, which is for the thermistor. In the instructions, the thermistor already has a regular DuPont connector on it. Here it does not, so I had to connect that, and it tells me where it goes at least, but the rest of this is still a little bit awkward, so we're going to go through that and I'll come back in a few. Okay, so I put the little ribbon cable down in here, so that's all connected up to the power and everything. Here on the side, you can see there's this little terminal block. So it's actually off of the ribbon cable comes a much thicker, I would say, not quite 12, probably 14 gauge wire that comes off and hooks up in this terminal block, and this terminal block hooks up to this laptop connector, and this laptop connector is what hooks up to the power supply. So it's an external power supply brick, and like I said, just like it's large, so it's almost like Xbox 360 size. So this is a 12 volt 15 amp power supply, and this hooks up just to here and into the wall, obviously. So that is all wired up. I'm really not a fan of how this is here. I would like to see this be a little bit longer and hook it up directly into it, but I see why they had to do it, since on a normal, well, all the other 3D printers that I have using the actual power supply, you have other 12 volt rails, or not even rails, but you have other 12 volt hookups that you can use to power your fans and other things like that. Well, you can't do that here, so everything has to go into this one power connector, and it has to get it from the external power supply. So I understand why they did it. Not a fan of it, but we'll see how it goes. I just don't like having this brick, this terminal outside of the printer. I'd much rather have it on the inside, just so nothing gets into it. So I also went ahead and wired up the thermistor for the heated plate, for the build plate, and it shows in the picture that there is a set of JST connectors for the, no, I'm sorry, not JST, the XT, like 40, I'll say, because they're smaller, for the heated bed, but I don't find those anywhere. There is another set of wires here for hookups, but they're using 18 gauge wire, and I'm just not comfortable putting in the 18 gauge with the DuPont style connectors. I'm just not comfortable with that, so I'm actually just going to run the heated bed straight to the board. I prefer that, and it's not a long run. I mean, this cable is plenty long. This thermistor is, an arm's width me, so it's like 4 foot long to go. It needs to go about 8 inches. So we're gonna have to bundle all this up. I don't want to cut it because I want to make sure everything works right now. I can always cut it and resolder later. It's not a big deal. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this hooked up. I'm gonna get it installed, and we're gonna go ahead and attach the extruder assembly to the pulleys. Okay, so the heated bed is wired up and it's mounted on, and the glass build plate is here. I did notice they didn't include any like binder clips that normally come in these kits in order to secure the build the glass to the build plate. So I have some extra ones. I'm gonna go just throw those on there. It is super duper close to the extruder here. I noticed I mounted it in just the right place for it not to actually rub against that. I might be just a little bit close, so I might actually slide it down just a smidge, just because I don't want it to be, again, I don't want it to be too close to the metal, because I don't really trust the plastic on the E3D knockoff Titan extruder. So I'm going to slide that down a little bit here, and I'm going to go ahead and mount on the extruder assembly. It is using, again, this is not documented in the documentation, which I was a little upset about, but I figured it out. The M3x16, so they just go into each side here. It just says go ahead and hook it up. It assumes, I guess, that you know that. So I'm going to, again, move this. I'll hook this all up, wire it together, and we'll take a quick look at it, and then we'll power it up and see if it works. Okay, so I have the extruder carriage on here now. I actually put it on the wrong way at first, so I had to flip it around. The fan right here for cooling the throat faces the front of the printer, which is right here. Like I said, I don't have the mounts for this printed yet. So we have the power connected up, getting ready to plug it in. The extruder is connected over here. I'm not a fan of how big the bend is and how that comes out, so again, that might be something I change positioning later, but for now it'll do. Let's plug it in and see what happens. It works. Turns on. So the fan up here turned on, that's a good sign. And the LCD display turned on, that's another good sign. I'm fairly certain that this does nothing loaded on it. I believe there was a firmware folder here in what they gave me. So that's cool. It turns on. Alright, so we're gonna call that the completion of the build. I'm not gonna bother, filming me attaching this. It's not a big deal. So that is complete. So the next part I'm going to do is going to be loading up the firmware onto this and configuring it and seeing what we can do with it. So that's going to wrap up this part of the video, guys. It's fully assembled, it powers on, did everything that I wanted to do, and the next part is going to be me loading on the firmware and configuring it and doing a print. So that wraps it up, guys. If you like this video, give it a like. Please comment down below if you think I should change anything, or if you like the way this is going. I want to do more of these builds and unboxings, and if you're liking the way that I'm presenting everything, please let me know. If you don't, also please let me know. If you like my channel enough, you can subscribe, and if you like it even more, you can become a Patreon. You can donate me $1 or $2. I greatly appreciate it. Links are down below, and there will be one up here, that side. And I have affiliate links down below. There's one for Amazon and Maker's Geek. So if you want to buy some filament or do your everyday shopping, please update your links. All the proceeds go to the channel. They're going to help me build things and just do so much more. I greatly appreciate all your help. And as always, happy printing.